Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Matt here, and today I'm going to be reviewing a neat little scope I got to try out. It is the Riton Conquer X3. Now this scope was given to the CRPS from a great sponsor, Tesro, and what's really cool is you can try out this scope for yourself by requesting it through the Loaner Rifle and Mentorship Program if you're here in Canada and shoot the Canadian Rimfire Precision Series. And I've been checking out a lot of sponsored gear for Rick, and this is one of the items I selected to really use more in depth and get to know better. I've been testing it for about 2 months now at the time of recording, and I decided to run it for an entire 10-stage match a few weekends ago and managed to place second with it, so I think I'm ready to give my thoughts and opinions about the scope now.
What scope do you have on it?
It's the Riton X3.
You actually decided to try it.
Yeah, so if I do badly today, it's because of the scope.
Whatever.
The X3 retails for $650 USD, which is just under the $700 USD price limit for production scopes for the CRPS series. And of course, this makes it one of the nicest options you can purchase while still staying in production class. And that's an important point for someone who may be looking for a production division scope in the higher price range, something a little bit better than the Diamondback Tactical. So I'm sure a lot of the CRPS shooters may look to this scope as one of those options. I'm not sure the NRL 22 rules specifically in the States for production and open, so please keep that in mind. I'm talking about the Canadian CRPS matches specifically. In a nutshell, I do like the scope. I think it is good, but there are a few things that I'm personally not a fan of. Some of them are personal preference, but it would prevent me from calling this scope fantastic, and of course we will touch on some of those things. But let's start with a general overview of the scope package. It is a 6-24 by 50, meaning you have a variable magnification range of 6-24 times and an objective lens diameter of 50 mils. The main body tube is 30 millimeters, and it has an internal elevation adjustment of 21 mils. I did find this figure to be true, although you do lose some adjustment at the extreme ends of the windage adjustment, which is very common for most scopes in the price range. The Conquer X3 also features a zero stop, which many shooters will appreciate. This is something that the Diamondback Tactical, for instance, lacks. The scope is a first focal plane, a feature that is very important to most shooters who participate in PRS style shooting matches, and the scope does come with lens caps out of the box, which is nice to see. They're pretty similar in design to the Butler Creek caps. I'm not even sure if they may be from the same factory perhaps, but they're simple and they work fine. You will notice a little sticker here on the bell end of the scope. This company is owned and operated by LE and military veterans, which is pretty neat. I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate that. I didn't remove the sticker because the scope is not mine. I just have it to try out at the moment. Some features of a scope that just have to work regardless of how nice anything else is are the turrets, the tracking, along with the reticle and glass. So that's where I'm going to start first. The turrets on the Conquer X3 have a nice tactile feel in the clicks. This is definitely a step up from the Diamondback Tactical again, and I know this isn't a completely fair comparison because of the price range, but again, I'm going to be comparing it to the Diamondback Tactical because I have a lot of experience with that scope, and I know it may be a natural upgrade for people who currently shoot with the Diamondback Tactical. I performed several tracking tests with the scope, both on paper as with live fire, and it performed very well. I have no complaints about it. The return to zero is reliable, and the reticle is also true at all magnifications. I do like the turret cap design that has the single screw at the top holding it down to the turret. This makes re-zeroing a quick and painless procedure, which is something I have to do more often than other shooters since I do shoot rimfire in a location that has drastic temperature changes throughout the year. So it's nice having the option to just quickly undo one screw, reset the turret zero, and keep going. The markings on the turret are nice and clear and easy to read. I'm not sure why any company marks the windage turret like this, but you can see instead of having markings for left and right, it simply counts up in one direction, which doesn't really make sense to me personally because that's not how people use a windage turret. But it's not a deal breaker, it's just something that's a little strange to me. The windage turret is not locking. Now, because I'm talking about the Conquer X3 here in the perspective of a rimfire shooter, the turrets are 6 mils per revolution. Now, this may or may not be an issue to you, depending on, again, how you use your rifle and what rifle you're going to put the scope on. However, I know for a fact that this is definitely a downside for many rimfire shooters that regularly shoot past 150 yards or so. In the CRPS matches that I shoot, we often dial past 15 mils to get out past 300 yards and so. And having a turret with 6 mils per revolution can be pretty confusing. When it comes down to it, I know it's simple math, working in multiples of 6. As long as you pass grade school, you can probably do it. But when you're under the stress of time and shooting in a time stage, I find the human brain performs at about 5 to 10% of its normal function. Many of the guys I shoot with regularly are very bright people working in engineering and the like, but they even hate working with these 6mm turrets. I'll give you a quick example. If a turret is at, let's say, 300 yards away and your hold is about 14 mils, easy enough, it's just 2 revolutions plus 2, but let's say the next target engagement is at 230 yards and needs only 9 mils. Well, now you're going back into the revolutions, which take a lot more brain power to figure out what the heck you have to dial. And remember, we're still under the stress of doing it in a match environment. So these 6 mils per revolution turrets may not be a big issue, again, especially if you're shooting center fire or doing other things, but for the CRPS style shooting, I know a lot of people don't like these 6 mils per revolution on their turrets. 10 mils or even 5 is more ideal, just to keep things a little bit more simple for the shooter. Another thing about the elevation turret that really bothers me is the fact that the markings for each position does not line up with the mark on the scope body. It can be pretty frustrating when you have to do a double take quickly to see if you actually dialed in the proper data into your turret, and this can be a little bit of a problem during a match. Just anything that causes confusion is pretty frustrating.
Except the fact that I can't tell when I'm on 0.
Impact.
Onto the reticle, I believe Riton calls this their MPSR, and there is a lot of personal preference when it comes down to a scope's reticle, so keep that in mind. This is just from my point of view. That being said, I think most shooters will agree with me that the reticle lines on the Conquer X3 are a little thick. That was something I noticed immediately while looking through the scope for the first time, and again, some people may prefer this, but it seems like it is much thicker than other scopes I've used before. I find with some smaller targets, the line covers a bit too much of what I would like to see. The center does feature a small dot, which I definitely like. I know a lot of shooters prefer that, and the MPSR is a Christmas tree style reticle with holdover markings for both elevation and windage on the bottom half of the view. It has 10 mils of elevation hold and 2 mils left and right, starting about 3 mils down. My personal preference is a bit more horizontal markings for your wind holds. It's not uncommon to see at least 4 mils of left and right hold for the lower part of the Christmas tree, which is my preference. But besides that, I think it is a very usable reticle, although as I previously mentioned, I think the line thickness may be an issue for some shooters.
Impact.
This scope is amazing.
The glass clarity in the scope is good. I think it performs well, especially given the price point. I have no real complaints about it. I did see that the image is a big step up from the Diamondback Tactical. It is nice and clear and bright. One of the biggest advantages over the Diamondback Tactical was not only the image clearness, but also the depth of field. There is some image degradation at the higher magnification range, but this is something to be expected in basically all scopes. The field of view was a little bit more narrow than what I was used to, but this might be because I'm coming from the Strike Eagle, which has a massive field of view and a 56mm objective lens. I had been shooting that for the past 7 or 8 months and going to now an Aries ETR. It's not exactly a fair comparison given that this scope has a 50mm objective, but I did notice the field of view was a little bit tighter than what I was used to. The glass again is a big step up from the Diamondback Tactical, and I think that along with the zero stop is really what you're paying for when you step up to something like the Conquer X3. Going on to some other user interface points with the scope, there is a quick adjustment diopter. It does work very well. It is nice and smooth. The magnification ring does work. I don't have any concerns about it, but it isn't too smooth. What I mean by that is it's not difficult to turn or anything, but as you turn it, you can kind of feel the inner workings moving a little bit. This is pretty normal. Again, I don't have any concerns about it. It works perfectly fine. It's just not the smoothest magnification ring I've ever felt. I do really like the feature of the integrated throw lever. Riton isn't the only company doing this, but it is a nice touch. The only downside I can see over a clamp on other versions is that you don't have the ability to tweak the lever's location. So if it does get in the way of your bolt handle, for instance, you can't change that. But that said, it should work with the majority of rifle setups. The only thing you really have to worry about, again, is if the lever causes clearance issues with a bolt gun and the bolt handle. But if you ever don't want to run the lever, the scope also does come with a threaded plunger. You can easily just swap out and have a nice flush surface on the ring. The parallax adjustment is also nice and smooth. You can see there is an illumination dial integrated into the left side of the knob as well. It does work very nicely. It illuminates the entire Christmas tree. This isn't a feature I personally use much at all, but it does a good job. The parallax adjustment goes down to 10 yards, again making it perfect for rimfire shooters like myself. You'll notice the markings do not have any yardage markings, so there's no numbers, which is a bit of a personal preference. I do like to see numbers on the parallax knobs, even though a lot of the time they don't line up perfectly, especially since they will change depending on what magnification you're using, but I do use them for reference to quickly get me in the ballpark before I fine tune it behind the glass. All in all, I do think the Riton X3 is a good option for someone looking for a sub 700 USD scope to stay in production division for the CRPS series. The bump up in price, again, from something like the Diamondback Tactical gives you much nicer glass, and again, the zero stop. That said, the 6 mils per rev and only 21 mils of elevation adjustment internally make it a little bit less appealing for those rimfire shooters looking to reach out past 200 yards regularly. I know a lot of shooters, including myself, are going to scopes that have 30 plus mils of internal elevation adjustment. Anyway, let me know what you think of the Riton Conquer X3 in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I do really want to check out the X7. The X3 is kind of their middle range in their scope lineup for precision rifles, so if I ever do have the chance to check out the X7, I would definitely love to do that. As usual, I'll do my best to answer any comments or questions. I'll see you guys in the next video, and take care.